Hi, mine's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss how the already terrifying timing of Boris Johnson's plans to completely surrender our safety to a deadly pandemic has been ramped up another notch as the Queen tests positive for COVID, drawing more public attention to it. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Boris Johnson is preparing to remove all measures against COVID. He says that we need to learn to live with the risk by mitigating, but he's not telling us to mitigate. Mitigating would be to use face masks in indoor locations with people from other households. Preferably good quality face masks as used in countries treating the issue more seriously. It would mean ventilations in schools, offices even, anywhere. In fact, the government are spending £12 million on Jubilee celebration books this year. In theory, I'd have no objections, unless, of course, they turn out to be another attempt to whitewash our history, which actually I'm sure they will be, so I guess I will have objections. But we have the money for that, but no money for inexpensive air purifiers for classrooms. Do me a favour. The argument about protecting the economy simply doesn't wash. Not only have we knackered our economy worse than any other G7 nation, despite the Tory lies, wearing face masks and having ventilation in offices and classrooms does not harm the economy in any way whatsoever. I mean, let's consider the state of the pandemic in the UK right now. We have a Prime Minister who, upon being informed that we were soon to become part of a global pandemic, very early on in 2020, advised us to let the virus punch us in the face. When that didn't work, we were advised to stay at home, but also to not stay at home. Now that this also hasn't worked, no matter how much booze the government drank on our behalf, we are to ignore it until it goes away. Perhaps the next tactic will be to write it a stern letter that we do not appreciate its company. And how did he promise to guide us through the pandemic? When he was forced to lock down, because letting the virus punch us in the face wasn't, on reflection, the best plan, he promised a world-beating test and trace system. What we got was a world-beating price tag of £37 billion, but the system itself simply failed to work. COVID deniers leapt on the news that didn't work as suggested, well, these systems like this don't actually help, so why do we bother? They do help in other countries where they actually get scientists to develop them. Less so when you simply give tens of billions of pounds to someone whose only skill is being able to ride a horse. And I wish I was exaggerating there. Then he promised the vaccines would do the trick. He then messed up the rollout by denying vaccines to various groups of people, even when the international consensus was that they were safe to use and should be used. So he was stripping away what few mitigations were in place in schools, while sending an army of completely unvaccinated young people to mingle in stale air for hours on end and for several days a week, to then pass on the virus that they were circulating amongst themselves to vulnerable family members back home. But manipulation of the public is sadly all too easy when the media are as insane as the government. Like newspapers at the weekend. Newspapers were full of the 3 people who died as a result of the storm at the weekend. On the same day, hundreds of COVID deaths were recorded. Is a life cut short by a falling tree worth over 100 people killed by indifference towards a virus then? The reason why Johnson is completely abandoning the measures is, of course, because he's been held hostage by the nutters in his own party. The measures were never going to be robust either way, because he personally has no respect for life. But there are those who are more insane and more reckless even than Boris Johnson, and they have him by the balls. A block of COVID deniers in the parliamentary party who are only supporting his leadership if he does exactly what they say. While he agrees with them, they will support him in a confidence vote. If he stands up to them, they will announce to their less insane colleagues that they are prepared to stick the knife in now. So over the past 6 weeks, there's been an operation to simply pretend the virus doesn't exist. They arranged with the news media to talk about the pandemic less and less, stop it being in people's minds, stop people talking about it. Mitigations like the use of face masks were removed. All designed to get the population thinking that the virus has subsided. Oh, we don't have to wear face masks. Oh, it must be getting better now. Oh yeah, people keep talking about it being milder. Oh, it's not a problem now. Despite horrendous pressure on hospitals and hundreds of people dying a day from COVID, but they don't know about that. That's not reported to them. They'd have to look that up. Most people don't. They changed the rules on testing. So the data makes it look like, oh, the cases have fallen really sharply. Oh yeah, dramatic falling cases. Oh yeah, the pandemic's on its way out now. But it's just because there's been way less testing gone on as a result of a change of government policy. Remember when Donald Trump, as president, complained that the numbers were so high only because the US was testing so many people? Yeah, Boris Johnson has put the natural extrapolation of that line of thinking into place. They then announced that they're going to stop publishing the data altogether in the spring. So we won't even be able to easily see the number of deaths, which are much less easy to fiddle. Now the latest is that free testing will be scrapped this week. So it's not just that they've reduced the amount of PCR testing going on. They're going to say, oh, don't bother with lateral flow tests. Don't bother with them. In fact, if you want to bother with them, you have to pay for them yourselves. In fact, I gather that universities have been told not to issue lateral flow tests after this week. So even if they have stocks remaining, they're not to give them out. Now, why would that be? Can't be to control costs because they've already been bought. It can't be because, oh, we don't think it's really necessary, because it's like, well, it's not necessary to not give them out then. It can only be a deliberate policy of not wanting people to even know if they're infected. It is the policy Johnson tried right from the start in 2020. Ignore it and it will go away. But now the Queen has tested positive for COVID. Now, her infection ironically has little to do with the government's cavalier attitude. The royal family are wealthy enough to be able to pay for regular tests and face masks and anything else they need. They could have chosen to wear face masks in each other company. They could have chosen to have air purifiers everywhere. You know, it seems likely she was infected by Charles. He tested positive and had seen his mother recently. And for about 2 days before her positive test, people were waiting with bated breath to see if she would become infected. Now she is. And I'm quite sure, I'm doing this on Sunday, but you know, it's coming out on Monday morning, this video. I'm quite sure from your point of view, this morning's headlines are full of it. It's bound to be all over it. And regardless of what mitigation senior royals chose to adopt or not, had there been a government mandate for the wearing of face masks when meeting people of other households indoors, this would not have occurred. There is no suggestion that any member of the royal family has disobeyed coronavirus legislation. They're not the government. In fact, as we now know, the Queen even turned down the chance to get a legal exemption from restrictions when paying respects to a dead husband last year. It's this simple. If the rules had said Charles should have worn a face mask when visiting his mother, he would have done so. If the rules said that it should be an FFP2 mask at least, then it would have been. This would have dramatically reduced the chances of the Queen becoming infected. She is old. Everyone wishes her well, but she is at risk. Her life is not worth more than those of the hundreds a day dying because our government do not care enough about them to mitigate the risks. But her life is of more public interest. It's like the 3 people who died to a storm were of more public interest than the 300 who died of COVID on the same day. And what will the public think of the government's so-called freedom if it kills the Queen, who has been their Queen for most of the public's lives? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.